Yeah, I think you do. I mean, do you ever help them with things?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you ever go get mommy and daddy things that we need for your brothers, for, especially like wipes or whatnot?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you ever help him when something doesn't work right on his Kindle? Yeah, sometimes you help, and then sometimes you try to take over the Kindle, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're doing. Well, there are lots of people out in the world that think because they're the oldest or they're the boss, or for whatever reason, that they get to stand there, and just tell others what to do and not worry about it beyond that. But one of the things that Jesus teaches us is that those who are in leadership are called to do the same work as everyone else. And not only called to do it, but often to be the ones who first do it.
Right.
So when Jesus says you should go out there and help those who are sick, visit with those who are lonely, help those who are poor, Jesus is the first one to do it.
He is?
He is. He doesn't just, we call it walking the walk and talking the talk. He talks the talk and he walks the walk. He does both of them. Instead of being like the one who just sits there and tells others what to do, he does it himself. And then we, as followers, do it as well.
Right.
Because if I help other people and they learn from me to help others, then they'll help other people, who they might learn to help others, who they help. And then before you know it, everyone's helping one another.
Right.
We don't follow a God who just tells us what to do and then leaves us to it. We follow a God who helps people too, just like we're called to. Can you sit up normal, Boo? Thank you. Thank you. So, even if you are the oldest kid, you are the first, it often means that you have to help your brothers, right?
Right.
And as they get older and they become more independent, Beckett should be helping Alden, right?
Right, and Alden should be helping another person.
Yes. And then, of course, they also help you.
Right.
Because even though you are the oldest, you still need help sometimes too, right?
Right.
Right. All right, let's have a prayer. Dear God, help us to serve others as you have served us. Amen. Thanks, Grace. I had all three Warnick boys at Eastwood this morning, and I asked the question about, do the younger ones listen to the older ones? It led to quite a kerfuffle. As we consider the Savior who came and walked with us, who walked the walk and talked the talk, let us return some of the blessings we have received to continue the service of this congregation. The usher may come forward. Gracious Creator, we ask that you take these blessings and use them to build the kingdom. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. You know, I remember a couple years ago thinking I was 100% ready for vacation. You've probably all done this as well, where, you know, you're ready to go on vacation. You go through the house, right? You make sure that the heat or the air conditioning is set for something reasonable for you not being in the house. You turn the water heater, to vacation mode if you're going to be gone for a couple weeks. And then nothing in the fridge, nothing on the counters that's going to spoil, right? And then the garbage and recycling all go out. Well, I made a small mistake. I thought I had gotten everything. But then I started to get the cameras that we have, watching the doors from inside. I started getting alerts all the time. Finally, I looked it up, and I couldn't tell what it was. And I figured it's the wind. It's, blowing the trees. It's shifting the shadows around. Finally, I caught it. Little flies. I figured out that I had forgotten to empty the basket that's at the very bottom of one of the shelves that has our potatoes in it. And those potatoes apparently were on the end of their lifespan. They don't last forever. So yeah, I came back to a kitchen full of fruit flies. It took me forever to get rid of them. It's not a way to feel, it's not a warm and fuzzy way to come back from vacation, right? No one likes to come back from vacation with some kind of emergency, the bathroom's flooded, a giant tree branch has fallen. I've had that happen too. By the way, the cherry tree is gone. We've been talking about that cherry tree. Anyway, no one loves coming back from a vacation or a treat, a weekend away. Hey, I don't even want to come back from having a nice night out and, being at a restaurant or walking into the house and finding something awful that I have to take care of. No one wants that. We find the examples throughout the Bible that happening. I think of Moses, 40 days and 40 nights on top of the mountain in God's presence. And then he knows something's wrong because God's mad. And he comes down, and those people who just 40 days earlier, they promised, we will not worship other gods, we will not make idols, and there they are worshiping an idol. That had to be pretty rude awakening back to the real world. Jesus, along with Peter, James, and John, same thing. Gotta imagine what this was like for James and John and Peter. We can't forget that the Gospels are ordered in a certain way, that the stories aren't just thrown in there for fun. Things build upon each other. James, John, and Peter were just on the mountaintop. They had just seen Jesus in this divine-like state, this transfiguration. They had seen Elijah and Moses, and they heard the voice of God. I want to point out how rare that last part is. Even in the book of Acts and other places, we don't get the voice of God speaking directly to the disciples. But in this moment, we get it. They hear God directly. And they come down off the mountain. And they're struggling to understand. You imagine them in quiet contemplation. Peter asks a question every once in a while. Don't know whether James and John are part of that questioning or they're just thinking over the answers themselves. They experienced something pure and holy. And they finally reach the bottom of the mount. And there's a big fight breaking out. People yelling and screaming at each other. Seriously? Now, what's happening is there are the 9, the other disciples who remained there, and they seem to be in some kind of argument with the religious elite group, the scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees, general teachers of the law. They seem to be fighting, the scribes being kind of the aggressors. And then there's the crowd. The crowd is a regular character throughout the Gospels. And crowd is capricious. One moment they're like, yay, God, or yay, Jesus. And the next minute they're like, crucify him. That was a little too joyous sounding, I'm sorry. You get the point, right? And Jesus walks into the midst of this. Peter, James, and John, they kind of be like, what? What? Seriously? Jesus comes in. What's going on? Now, we kind of expect to have the scribes jump in and say whatever they're going to say. But instead, we actually have the crowd come in as a talking character. It is a man comes out of the crowd, out of the group that is not arguing, but listening, to say, I have brought my son to your disciples to heal him. He has this spirit that makes him fall on the ground and convulse. It makes him mute. And your disciples were unable to fix it. And this apparently is what the scribes are all upset about. We're never really told the scribes' position, but we can make some assumptions based on Jesus' reaction and knowing them. Because the disciples are reflections of their teacher, of their master. And if the disciples are failing at what they are supposed to be able to do, it reflects badly on Jesus. Now, it does seem a little silly to me. After all, my daughter, who's 8, closing in on 9, is taught by a teacher who's in her 30s. And I don't expect her to be able to balance a checkbook or drive a car or anything that the 30-year-old teacher does. There's a learning curve. It takes time to learn everything. And obviously, the disciples don't know everything the master knows, right? But that's not how the scribes take it. And that's really Jesus' reaction. How long am I going to have to be around you all, showing you all what I can do before you get it? How long am I have to deal with this? Now, a reminder, as I said, we always pay attention to order. Jesus was just up on the mountaintop, and he was with Moses, and he was with Elijah, who spent their entire lives proving again and again that God was with them, and that God was God, and that God was with his people. I mean, how many times did Moses have to deal with these grumbling people out in the desert, giving them water, giving them food, protecting them from, snakes, people, various problems. Elijah famously goes up a mountain himself to convince the crowd to follow God. And he does perhaps the single most flashy miracle in all of the Bible. Let's face it, bringing somebody back from the dead, super awesome miracle. Bringing fire down from heaven that consumes not only the meat, but the stones of the altar. I'm going to argue that one might be flashier. Slightly. I mean, literal fire from heaven. That's a pretty big miracle. And the people believed, and then they went to go worship other idols. I imagine so many of the prophets having a big red spot right in the middle of their forehead their entire lives, just from doing this. So, Jesus had just gone to see them, those who experienced the same thing. Now, Jesus is here among the people that he has performed miracles for over and over again, these scribes and the crowds, and they still struggle with belief. They still struggle to understand. How long am I going to deal with y'all? So Jesus has the boy brought to him, and the boy immediately goes into one of these convulsions. It sounds like some kind of epileptic-like seizure. He's on the ground, frothing and throwing himself around. And he asks the father, well, how long has this been happening? Well, since he was a boy, it tried to even kill him. And then he asks, if there is anything you can do, could you do it? And he's like, can do? Of course I could do something. Anyone who has belief, it can be done for them. And the man says, this is a beautiful prayer. We don't think of this as a prayer, but it's a beautiful prayer. I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. He admits, I believe in God, but I can only give you as much belief as I can hold on to. I mean, we all do that, right? We all claim we believe in God, right? Everyone here believes in God. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, I would think. But at the same time, how many of us try to control what happens? That we try to take control back from God. So we all do that too, right? It's extremely faithful. This man does not pretend to possess perfect faith. He does not claim certainty. He brings what he has and he places it before Jesus, and Jesus heals the boy in response. Now this looks like any other healing, with maybe that little extra bit of reflection with the, Jesus being like Elijah, being like Moses, having these same struggles with these unbelieving people that they had. And, the scribes are shown to, be troublesome and wrong. The disciples learn a new lesson. The crowd see a miracle. Kid is healed. Jesus is Jesus. It sounds like any other one. But then the disciples say, well, why couldn't we do that? They've done it before. They've done before many times. Jesus responds, because this kind, you got to pray out. Have you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? There's like an idea that when we humans learn things, if we gain just enough knowledge, that we can become dangerous because we start to believe that we have a hold of whatever it is. We have just enough knowledge on this topic to basically be a jerk about it. That's where these disciples are. They know just enough. They can do some healing, they can do some teaching, but they haven't gotten far enough to really understand the mechanics behind what they are doing. It's like me teaching my children to recite the Lord's Prayer. It's great if they can recite the Lord's Prayer. But do they really understand what they're asking for in the prayer? It comes with age, it comes with time. It comes with getting from that moment where you know just enough to that moment where you come to understand it. The disciples haven't reached that yet. They know just enough to be jerks. Not really jerks. In this case, they know just enough to not be able to understand. Jesus is telling them, it's not the way you wave your hands. It's not about the words you say. It's not about mixing up the right oil and marking them. It's about your spiritual health, your spiritual life, your faith. It's not saying like, oh no, I failed. It's, oh, I need to put my faith in God. The same thing that we're talking about. Trusting that God can do it. It's not that this is a special kind that takes prayer. It's all of them take prayer, and in this moment, you weren't approaching it right. You were doing the healing, not you were acting as a conduit for God. But they go on, and we're going to have to jump a little bit forward in the story, just a little bit. And they've now reached Capernaum, and they're in the house, and Jesus has talked about all these other things. And they bring up somebody else who has done what they could not do. There was somebody out there who was casting out demons, casting out ill spirits. And he wasn't one of them. He wasn't somebody who had gone through the process of following Jesus around and learning from him. And they're like, we saw this guy and we told him to stop. They're expecting Jesus to be like, oh, great job, guys. Said Jesus goes, well, why did you do that? He had faith. He had the spiritual life. He had what you guys were lacking. He remembered the pray. He goes on, if you have faith enough to perform a miracle, obviously it's real faith. Because it's not a magic spell. It's, again, not about how you wave your hands or mix the oil or say the right words in the right order. It's not magic, it's faith. And faith is deeper. Faith cannot be faked. Real faith. His disciples are still struggling with this. As they struggle throughout the entire gospel with this idea. They think it's about formula. After all, when they were on the road, they were, instead of, arguing about what they had seen or talking about Jesus had just told us that we need to pray more, that we need to work on our spiritual life. Instead of doing any of that, they start comparing resumes, figuring out which one of them is the best of the disciples, which one of them is the leader of the disciples. I got to imagine, Peter, James, and John are like, he took us up on the mountain and some crazy things happened. We're not allowed to tell you, but trust me, we're top of the pack. Meanwhile, Philip and Thomas are over there saying, look, we had to deal with the angry scribes. We have more experience on the front side than you do. So obviously we're more important because when Jesus is going to be king, sitting in Jerusalem, he's going to need people who can deal with irate subjects. We're top of the heap. And Judas is like, well, I handle the books. Obviously, I'm the most... Anyway, we're not going into the whole play of that. So they're arguing about this instead of working on what Jesus had talked to them about. They're having their little arguments. And when Jesus... had talked to them about, I'm just reminding you all, I'm going to be handed over, I'm going to be killed, I'm going to be raised back. They're not talking about that. They're not even going to ask a question about it. They don't want to deal with it. And so they get to the house, and Jesus is like, so what were you talking about? No. They know that's a trap that they are going to walk into if they answer honestly. But of course, Jesus being Jesus already knows. And so Jesus has a child come up and sit with him. Children are loved in every society. Just putting that out there. But a reminder that children in ancient society, as they often do in today's society, do not have a social standing. I love my kids. But if you were to say, want something, the last person you should go try to get it out of it is any of my kids, because you're not getting anywhere. One, because they're my kids and they're stubborn as all get out. But, it's not like my daughter can call up the president for you and tell him, oh, you should help my friend. It's not about knowing the right people. when it comes to kids, because it doesn't help. And so Jesus here is twisting everything that they think on its head. Once again, does that so much. It's not about magic, knowing the right things, saying the right things. It's not about knowing the right people. It's about faith, and now something new. It's about service. Serving those who can't give you anything back. Caring for those who can't help you. Peter, James, and John have literally seen literally seen Jesus turn into some kind of divine-like state they don't understand. They have literally heard God. That's the highest level, by the way. There's no one above God, right? And Jesus is telling them that he who entered into this divine spirit-like state that they don't understand, his chief worry on this world is caring for those who cannot help him in any way. If we are called to be followers of the most powerful being that has ever existed on this earth, then we should do what that most powerful being did, which is care for the least powerful beings. The little ones, those who cannot help us, the sick, the ill, the imprisoned, the lonely, the hungry, the thirsty, those with no social status, without any expectation that they can help us. And I'm not saying don't help the other people too, but do it in the same way with that expectation that they will not return the favor, at least to you. A being who literally talked to the most powerful ancient leaders, who has shown himself to be as, if not more, and we eventually know will show himself to be more powerful because he is God. That's who he serves. Jesus closes this part by talking about stumbling and saltiness. Now, these words appear other places. You know, we did a Sermon on the Mount last spring, I think, like spring before this spring. And saltiness and gouging and hand cutting and whatnot, that all appeared there as well. So it appears in a different spot in here. In here, it is a reminder to not let those things that are earthly keep us from following Christ. To not say, oh, you know, as I was just talking about, I'm going to help the person who can get my ministry further ahead, or because they can help me personally or with my business or whatever. Do not let that keep you from following the way of Christ. And when you are together, when I am gone, build one another up, sharpen one another, so that you will keep following in this path even when I'm not here. Keep each other salty. The positive salty, not the, salty language salty. Keep each other fresh. we follow a man who is quickly showing himself in the Gospel of Mark to be something more. I remind you of that because we're reading Mark in the way that it was read, one verse at a time, working our way through, as the disciples fully discover through time. As the readers of Mark would have been invited to fully discover in time. We have just seen Jesus enter into a state that shows who he really is, at least a glimpse. And then immediately show him to come down, to pray, to serve. And that is our call. To pray, to serve. So go out there, pray with every step, serve with every hand motion, and make this world a better place. Thank you. This is an unfamiliar tune, isn't it? This is an unfamiliar one, isn't it? Yeah. I think I opened up the Bible, or I opened up the hymnal. I saw this hymn, thought the words are perfect. It works exactly with what we're talking about. And I got How Pleasant Is It with How Pleasant It Is, which is a different hymn. So I invite you to join, sing as well as you can with it. It's great words. So I invite you to join us in 451, How Pleasant Is It? nicely done. If you haven't had a chance, thanks, Sister Bev, for all the music I put her through. Go out and serve. Go out and pray. We follow the Lord, who takes the little faith of a man who says, I believe, but help me in my unbelief, and heals. Go out and follow the God who walks among and heals the little. Amen.